Hey everybody, welcome. Melanin alert, melanin alert. No, I'm joking. I need to really come up with an intro, something dope, something cool, something that matches my personality. But until then, we'll kind of switch it up every time. But what's up, guys? This is your host, Naika Owens here. We are tuned in right now to the Melanin Alert podcast. And listen, when I tell y'all that I have a special special Melanin Alert podcast this evening. As you can see, we typically do our broadcast on Thursdays. Today we're having it on Friday. That's how you know. That's how you know it's special. But I have the queen, the infamous Sabrina Harris backstage. I mean, when I say this woman is absolutely phenomenal, and I'm blessed. We, the community, are blessed to actually have her here as a special guest today on the Melanin Alert podcast, just because of all the work, um, all the experience, all the wisdom that this woman has, and just her overall aura and vibe and personality. Like, this is a woman that you want to meet, but also the knowledge and the things that just come out of her, the spews out of her is just overwhelming. So again, Sabrina Harris, she is, I mean, her professional experience or professional career expands through at least 3 decades. And this is including public service, business administration and management, quality assurance and management, frontline supervision, medical services, definitely professional training and development, entrepreneurship, public service, mental health, counseling, holistic wellness approaches. I mean, literally, y'all, the list is like we can go all day on here. But Sabrina's also the CEO and the executive director and advocacy strategist, because y'all know I don't know how to speak English, of Lovinaires Inc. That is a 501c nonprofit organization that utilizes physical education or psychoeducation, activism, advocacy, and community engagement to primarily educate and motivate and really just hype up mature women, teens, adolescents, girls to the positivity of life, the positivity of what they gain, and also to maintain the control of their lives. So did I did I mention that Sabrina was amazing? I told y'all that, right? Oh, okay. Just in case y'all didn't know. But yes, I mean, this cutting edge ministry engages a multifaceted approach towards goal accomplishments, trauma informed workshops that I've had the pleasure of actually attending, empowerment forums, social projects, professional counseling, healing circles, which is so needed in this day and age, especially in 2020 when we're dealing with coronavirus and everything else that comes with that, and all the other mental stressors that come with just being confined into your house home, especially when you're not used to it. I mean, like I said, she is incredible. She additionally is the visionary host, the producer, and the creative director for the Cultured Pearls of Wisdom show. Now, this is a multi-dimension social media platform strategically designed to unveil, highlight, explore, and emphasize social orientation approaches towards important social topics such as mental health awareness, trauma attending, healing spaces, and holistic holistic wellness approaches. Y'all, again, she's an island girl. Her tongue just sometimes be moving a little bit quicker than what she can control. So y'all bear with me. But yes, so we have again, this woman is here today. We're gonna talk about a very sensitive topic. But y'all know me. We get deep and we definitely touch on it, especially when it comes down to trauma and domestic violence. As you are aware, in today's society, unfortunately, domestic COVID-19 has really been able to strengthen a lot of partnerships, a lot of relationships. I have been seeing y'all hustle, get it, create things that have not been created yet. I mean, the whole 9 yards. However, on the other hand, for some people, in some instances, COVID-19 has been a nightmare. especially to the trauma and abuse community. People who are in toxic relationships, people who are in domestic violence relationships, and are now being forced to be locked into their homes with their abusers. So we're gonna jump right in. I'm super excited. Shout outs to Marie, Miss Peaches. She is in the building. She says, "Hey, Queen. Thank you for tuning in today. If you are in the building, please make sure you comment, especially if you are part of Sabrina's network. She still can see your amazing comments. We want to get that feedback, so please don't be shy. But I am going to waste no further time because I'm excited and I'm ready to feed y'all this valuable information. But I'm excited to bring on Sabrina Harris. So again, if y'all could please help me welcome the incredible, the amazing Sabrina Harris. So, hey Sabrina, how are you doing today, dear? Let me see if I can add you. Here we go. Here we go. How are you,
How
Queen?
are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for being a part of our podcast today.
I'm honored. Thank you very much for the invitation. And we bring light, love, hope, positivity, and all that wonderful stuff from Palm Beach County, sending it right your way. It's a pleasure.
I appreciate that. We're definitely sending it right back. How's everything going right now with the whole COVID-19 and stuff? How you guys handling it up there?
I have to say that things are been progressing along very well. There have
Hmm.
been a lot of tension, a lot of pressure, a lot of heaviness. Of course, you know there's a educational curve to this. There is a being able to control yourself and maintain inside of life. There are many people that I know who were furloughed and they lost their job. So there was that curve. There are issues with unemployment. But we've been countering, especially in my circle, that for everything that has been negative and disserving and it has been difficult to bear, there has always been something good. So there's always a way
Absolutely.
to counter and balance, but it's the mindset that drives it that makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's a specific point and a very essential point that you're making just due to the fact that everyone has a circumstance and everyone has a testimony. If you don't have one, trust me, it's on its way. And we're not saying that in the most humblest experience, but yeah, you have a testimony, you have a circumstance, and like you said, it's how you climb out of that, it's how you overcome that, and grow from that and not allow yourself to kind of be shadowed by your circumstance because everyone, like I said, has one. So that's
Absolutely.
incredible.
And acceptance is essential. I see a lot of people struggle inside of challenge because of denial. They're not
Mhm.
willing to see it for what it is and accept it for what it is. And you can't deal with what is until you do those things. So it's essential that we accept. A lot of people just really didn't buy into COVID-19 as a deadly virus. It was a hoax,
Mhm.
it was a governmental scam, it was many different things. And now you come full circle where individuals are now perishing. They allowed this to spread throughout their families. Different things have happened that did not need to happen if they had just heeded and taken advantage of the information that was shared and just accepted this is a serious reality. Whatever the origin, however it originated, this is a true concern in today's society, and unfortunately it's going to be one. It's
Yeah.
not going to go
Yeah.
away. It's going to subside, but to say it's going to go away, I think it's very far fetched.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it weird how we went from at one point in time, I could specifically remember when they were telling us, oh, don't wear masks. Don't wear masks. You're not supposed to wear a mask. It's actually worse for you. And now it went from that to quickly being, oh, now it's mandatory. You can't even go anywhere without having one. So, and now we're back to opening up and everything. So it is kind of it's sketchy, but it's also an eye opener because we're not saying that people are not getting sick from this. They definitely are. However, it's very weird. It's very
It's
weird.
very, very weird, and I would also say very complicated. And the scientific nature of it is just that. The scientific nature it speaks to. That's why I love Dr. Fauci and the other professionals who are giving the scientific facts, which makes you look at things. But we have to remember that a lot of decisions that are being made about COVID-19 are not necessarily because of the medical orientation of the virus itself. It's because of the economy and a lot of other different things. So it's really
Yeah.
not, in a sense, some of the decisions people oriented. It is
Mm-hmm.
monetary based. It's a lot of different things of that nature. But they said the same thing about testing initially. If you
Yeah.
were asymptomatic, they were saying, don't worry about it. You didn't have to go. And now it's like, yes, let's test everybody. And then you have an alternative consideration up to the White House saying, well, no, 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 let's not test everybody, because the more we test, the more of a problem we're going to have, which is mind blowing. The more we test, the more data we're going to have and the more that we're going to know, which makes such a tremendous difference.
It definitely does. It definitely does. So speaking of difference, I was able to, let's talk about how we met. So I actually was introduced to you through Mr. Harrell. If y'all know, I am a huge fan of Mr. Harrell. Mr. Harrell is the best dressed man. Shout out to Harrell's Menswear out there on University. If you haven't already, check it out. When I tell you swag, he was also a key part of my last event, which was the Melanin experience. Oh, I'm sorry, that was my first one, the Eclectic Melanism fashion show, where he actually walked the one way for one of his last times because he's getting ready to retire. So shout out to Mr. Harrell. Thank you guys so much. And his wife, she Mrs. Harrell, she's freaking amazing, her whole family. But I actually was introduced to you by him because I had met him for the first time. And after hearing about my story, he was like, "You know who you gotta meet. You have to. I have to meet you with Sabrina. I have to link you up with Sabrina. Here, this is her information. Follow her on social media. Let her know that I introduced you guys, etc. And you invited me to your event, which is the Halo Brunch. This was last year, around
Yes,
this exact same time.
yes.
So it's like our 1 year anniversary. But yes, around this exact same time, and you actually premiered a documentary, and it was called Broken Places. So, talk a little bit about that event. What was the purpose? I know what the purpose of that event was for, but talk about a little bit what that event was for and what was Broken Places.
I appreciate that, and I wanted to co-sign your enthusiasm and love for Mr. Harrell. To be honest, I think at this point, maybe about easily 7 to 10 events that we've done on the ground. He's lent his
Mm-hmm.
expertise. He's brought his troops. He's modeled. He's even role modeled the appropriate way to do a tie and different things of that nature. So he is just an amazing as a philanthropist or an individual who really wants to give back to his community, and his wife, of course, as well, Miss Leola. But I just love them too as well, and I thank him for what he's poured into our organization, because in the beginning he believed in us, and that is a testament to the connection that he made, because you're one of many calls and his name is always attached to it, so we're very grateful. As
Very.
it relates to the Halo Brunch, I'm going to say I'm very big on spirit, very spiritually centered, faith based approaches, and all of that is very important in my life. So I always
Mm-hmm.
get people by conversation. Many times I want to meet you face to face, but a lot of people don't realize a lot of our conversation is me kind of feeling you out. It's taking it on a particular journey. I'm looking for authenticity. I'm looking for transparency. I'm asking a lot of questions. You may or may not want to answer them, but that lets me know introductorily who I'm dealing with. And I have to
Right.
say, your light was overwhelming, but it was your passion, not only for business, not only for entrepreneurship, but you really have a full ministry in you to bless women. And you haven't even scratched the surface on it yet. So I just want to bless you with that confirmation. But that's how you landed at the Halo Brunch. But as it relates to Broken Places, and this is very important, it's a documentary that's several years out now, but it follows young people from the early stages of their lives who've been exposed to trauma and its adverse childhood experiences. You're going to see ACEs as a buzz term now today in society. But it basically followed them to see what happened from the time they experienced the trauma to determine what happened in their families and to see them all the way through adulthood. And the goal was to recognize the unattended traumatic symptoms and effects that were pretty much residual and see what
Mhm.
could be done to intervene and turn this around so it didn't go to the next generation. Because in adulthood, a lot of these individuals had children of their own. So that's why a lot of
Mhm.
my studies is trauma based. As far as my victimization, which I do talk a lot about, I've learned that intergenerational trauma is huge. And I mean, we can take it all the way back to slavery and those different things that have happened, historical trauma, but especially in vitro. If you're going through situations where you're being abused, you're always upset, you're frightened, different things happen in that way, you leave a genetic footprint. So this can happen
Mhm.
at birth, which a lot of people don't realize. So it's innocently passed along if there's no intervention in that way and you don't remove yourself from the setting. However, also children in homes where abuse is evident, all of this impacts them unless professional counseling and intervention is instituted as a way to minimize, can't necessarily erase, but trauma is supposed to be temporary. It's not supposed to be long term. But when it's unattended, it festers and it grows. So the documentary proved with proper intervention, even later on in life, if that be the case, it hugely minimized the adverse effects. And it turned things around in such a meaningful way that it only added to serve that if we can, at all costs, the intervention should be during childhood. But there should never be a phase in your life where you say, I'm too old for this, because there's always a way to counter and atone for things that have been done. So that's kind of
Absolutely.
where, oh,
And I've always, I had the pleasure of actually watching this documentary, and I was so moved. I think by the end of this event, you guys, like, it was such a beautiful event. Like, we were all in tears, happy tears, like, not, those, like, it was like that place where you can come and just share space with other women and other survivors and other people who have triumphed, and it was a beautiful vibe. You had to be there. So whenever Sabrina throws another event, y'all make sure y'all don't miss it. But I love that documentary just because oftentimes, me being a young from part of the younger generation, right? I am very
yes.
aware that there is a it's kind of like, in a sense, it feels like a older sometimes it feels like an older generation versus a younger generation type of thing, just due to the fact that as a younger, and I'm only speaking from my experience, as a young person who has her own experiences, for to be only 28 years old or going on 28 years old, I've been through a lot. And talking to certain people, often, especially the older generation, sometimes it feels as if they kind of minimize or downplay your experiences, or because you're so young, you must not know what you're talking about. And I feel like that when we had that event last year, it kind of proved that the dialect between our older generation and our younger generation is so important because of what we can offer each other. The fact that the older generation has so much wisdom, knowledge, and experience, and the younger generation, although we have the creativity, we have the innovation, and we have the ambition. I feel like those two together are important, but oftentimes I feel as if I see a lot of people that they don't, parents don't listen to the children, or things like, I'm your parent, so I'm always right. You get what I'm saying? And as we know, no
I most
human is always
definitely, I definitely get what you're saying, and I co-sign what you're saying. And I want to say this that I've found, especially in my research and everything that I've been doing as it relates to my PhD,
right.
is that the older generation or the senior generation, your Medias and your matriarchs and your patriarchs, they were
Hmm.
raised in an era where a lot of what we do now was not standard. So they didn't communicate. They didn't talk about things. There were a lot of secrets. There was a lot of denial. There was a lot of dysfunction, even in the way families communicated and handled themselves amongst each other. But
Mm-hmm.
it continued to trickle down. What I see happening now, especially with the millennials and beyond, is that we're now talking, we're now advocating, we're now standing up for ourselves, we're now taking stances. And the
Mm-hmm.
more senior population are like, what are you doing? And instead of seeing it as a way to learn and grow and develop, they're seeing you as disrespectful. They're seeing you out of your place and things of that nature. So what you said is very powerful, because I'm finding even in my own family, to be honest, because I'm going through some things right now with that, is that to educate and fuse the past with the present is a very difficult and challenging situation, but it's very
Mm-hmm.
necessary, because it takes someone like yourself or myself who has an open mind to say, I don't care how old I get, I'm going to be a lifelong learner. I'm always going to be learning something. I'm always going to be doing something. I'm always going to be open. But you know what is the caveat that's most important? Not only am I learning, I'm applying.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge is
Yeah.
good in context, but knowledge is powerful and it is beneficial when it's applied. So there's no need for me to learn all this and maintain an antiquated mindset. It is important for me to shift, apply, welcome queens like you into my life. Because you know what? For as much as I may know, I learned so much. I told you it was such a pleasure to spend time with you and talk to you, and even to see the moves and everything that you're making. And there's no hate, there's only love, because you have uniquely what is meant for you to contribute to this life. And I am crazy if I don't benefit from it. I am crazy if I don't want to be around you. And Sabrina is not crazy.
Well, that is incredible. Like that is important. Like you said, lifelong learners. It doesn't matter whether my nephew, who is years old now, I have my nephew teach me things that I didn't know. To say certain, oh, your thing is, I think, just people being stuck in
We have to. Mic is muted because I took my headphones out. But yeah, that's something that we
Yes.
have to change. So for that, I want to lead that into our next question. What are some of the most toxic traits or traumas that you've seen in your experience through all your history that have been passed on to parents or passed on by parents? So whether that be oh, you're not allowed to speak up for yourself, you get what I'm saying, or I'm always right, and that causes them to kind of never speak up for themselves in their adult life, or what have you seen that have been some of the most common?
Well, I'd start by saying that we're taking emphasis on the traumas, and that is the abuse, whether it's physical, emotional, verbal. I tell people all the time, verbal is far more impactful. I mean, most people, men from physical abuse, albeit very, very dysfunctional and definitely something that you do not want to do, but the
Mhm.
verbal, because it institutes a message inside you. And especially when people are doing their best to break you down, they are targeting your self esteem, your confidence, and all of that nature. These are messages that are carried on all the way through life. So those are very impactful in that way. Molestation, I'm seeing a lot of, dealing with a lot of sexual trauma. And I'm working with a 10-year-old right now who was the victim, and she became the perpetrator.
Wow.
Um, the Her abuser used pornography and different things during the grooming period that opened a gateway that could not be closed. And because there was no intervention, even though the situation was known, it kind of left her to have all of these vivid images flowing through her mind, remembering what happened. Unbeknownst to them, the perpetrator was still reaching out to her, and she, in turn, recently, which is how I acquired the case, she victimized a 4-year-old boy, and she's 10.
Wow.
So it's really complicated in that way. And that's why I say when there's no intervention, it makes it 10 times worse. But what I found in particular traits is those who are overly controlling,
Mm.
those who have negative self-talk because they have it to themselves, they definitely more than likely have it to their children. You said
Mm-hmm.
one that's lack of communication or lack of effective communication. Meaning a
Mm.
lot of people just want to dictate. They want to tell you what they want. They want to get accomplished what they desire to. But it's no dialogue. It's no exchange. It's no even consideration. I say one of the best things I do on any given day of my week is just sit and listen. I
Mm.
listen to people. And sometimes, no, it doesn't make sense. Sometimes they're way off the mark, to be honest with you. But
Mm-hmm.
I listen, I let them get it out because they feel validated. And once a person feels validated, they can begin to trust you. And now, when they begin to trust me, I can right some of those wrongs. I can layer them with good information and message and give them something else to consider. But if I close them off at the gate, I've lost them completely.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
effective communication. You speak something, it's received, it's understood. There's a whole process that goes through it. I would also say those who have the tendency to not really control their emotions well, because they leave an imprint. Those that a lot of people say, oh, I'm quick to go off and I'm quick to do all of these things. And you'll find this is the testament to a case I'm also working now, where there's a 1-year-old in the home, and the mom and the 12-year-old, they're at this tug of war. Both of them have been diagnosed now with bipolar disorder, and they're getting the treatment they need. But it was like World War III in the home. So what happened? The baby, she started
Mm.
lashing out. She started scratching. She started having these explosive temper tantrums. And I had to say to mom that she's a product of this environment. And the
Yeah,
mom didn't even put it together in that way. So the most dominant individuals with no consideration for other people, and I would definitely say a narcissistic individual, these are the people who really pass along the adverse traits. And they really traumatize their children in the process, to be honest.
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Um, I've been a product of certain type of own traumas, etc. Like as most know. And then certain things, like you said, when people say things, that emotional trauma is super detrimental. I call them gremlins, because it's those same gremlins that are in our head constantly, and you'll be surprised what somebody said to you years ago, how it still affects certain people and they still hold on to that. Like I've realized that. So that is definitely.
I would definitely say that is the truth. And I'm going to give you a very personal, not too many people know, but I've become very vocal about it recently. And you'll hear more because I'm actually doing a lot of research. But I'm adopted and I was abandoned in the hospital at birth. So, biological anything right now, I have no connection, I have no knowledge, I have no anything. So I was blessed to be adopted, brought here because I was born in Tampa. It's a whole big story behind it. But I've been with my adopted family, I believe, since the age of 2, based on the records and what I've been able to gather so far.
Mm-hmm.
However, as time grew on, relationships were so important to me. But
Mm-hmm.
it didn't matter whether the relationship was functional or dysfunctional. I just wanted to be relatable. I wanted people to like me, took it very personally if they didn't, et cetera, et cetera. And over a period of time inside of trauma therapy until adulthood, once I was dealing with my victimization, it birthed itself that I had a huge sense of abandonment. So inside of the abandonment, almost like osmosis that is layered in me from experience, I didn't even really remember I'm seeking validation for other people because of the abandonment issues that I had.
Mm-hmm.
So it's amazing how things come full circle. But if I had never engaged myself in trauma therapy, I would have never come to that conclusion. And I would have never recognized what I was doing. So it was amazing for me. It was such a breakthrough.
Yeah. And I'm a strong listen, for all of y'all who are tuned in right now, everybody who's in the comments, shout out to Lala, Joanne, John, that's in the building, showing love through the comments right now. But I'm a strong believer in that somebody can benefit from laying on somebody else's couch, and and really pouring out their info and their feelings. True story. Most people don't know that I had to go back into therapy through this whole COVID-19 situation,
Yes.
and just due to the fact that I realized, and I didn't realize at first how triggered I was, coming from a domestic violence relationship, moving into a place where it's not necessarily like my comfort zone, and then like feeling like you're walking on eggshells, but then also like being confined into a spot against your will. And I started like snapping, and I started doing little things that I could not. I mean, I really was getting outside of my character, and I started to notice it more and more. And it wasn't until I talked to one of my mentors who just so happened to work with women in distress. And she was like, "Oh, baby, you are in full flame trigger mode right now." And I'm like,
Absolutely.
you don't know until another perspective, someone else, especially who is a professional and who can easily identify that, because everyone around me just was like, what is wrong with this girl? Like, what is wrong with her? Not knowing that I'm in this triggered mode and I'm not aware of it.
Yes.
So
that to me is very powerful, because I'm going to say, even as a professional in this field, I have definitely been triggered. My husband was home for a month and a half. Mm-hmm. And if I say the contact was like overwhelming, because he was always present, he was always involved, he was, the amount of contact that we had, it went to 99+%. Mm-hmm. And he unofficially diagnosed, but he has all the traits, and we know that this to be true, of ADHD. So and this is a testament, because he advanced into adulthood with all of these attributes. Always has to be busy. He goes until he crashes. He's from one project to the next. And I had to finally say, listen, on a daily basis, we're going to have to find some kind of reprieve from each other. Meaning, you go fishing, you do something that gives us a quality balance, because we're not used to being around each other this much. And I said, I'm finding myself becoming frustrated, and a lot of different things. You're becoming frustrated. The responses are kind of, curt and all of this. And I was like, we don't interact with this way. And
right.
So just recognizing it and putting those barriers and boundaries in place, it was so very helpful. So I can easily see, and I know how relationships and that tension, it explodes, but we have to recognize and do what we need to do to counter that.
Absolutely. So speaking of, this is a great segue into my next topic. I want to pull up a chart that I have here, and I'm going to share it with everybody so everybody can see it. But this is a power and control wheel. And I want to talk about it a little bit with you, because we definitely touched on it several times in regards to what we were talking about earlier, that having control, the different types of traits that also parents bring into the home, but also lovers, people who are narcissists, abuse, the whole 9 yards. So this is a physical, sexual violence wheel in regards to power and control. And I'm just going to read through it just a little bit and tell me your thoughts on, we'll go 2 by 2, so that way it goes a little quicker. But the first 2 are using intimidation. So making him or her feel afraid by using looks, actions, gestures, smashing things, destroying his or her property, abusing pets, and displaying weapons. The next one is using emotional abuse, which these 2 are huge. Putting him or her down, making him or her feel bad about him or herself, calling him or her out of their name, making them feel like they're crazy, so gaslighting them, playing mind games, humiliating him or her, and making him or her feel guilty. So how often do you see those in trauma in your cases of trauma victims?
They're ever present. And the reason I say that is because the ultimate goal in situations like these is control. Many of these individuals, no different than bullying, they've never had a strong sense of self. They have typically low self-esteem, lack of confidence, or they're trying to overcompensate in some way. So what is the easiest way that an abuser feels they can gain the upper hand is by reducing you. So if I reduce you, if you're this strong, black, beautiful queen and you're feeling yourself and you're confident in everything else, if I can somehow get inside of your psyche and make you question who you are, I can even, some of the manipulation goes so deep, I can make you question what you believe about yourself. And you just said the perfect term, and that's gaslighting. We have a reality. We know who we are. I know that I'm substance filled. I know that I'm intelligent. I know that I'm powerful. I know that I'm a queen. But if I receive your negative messages, if I allow you to get inside my psyche, now you're strategically manipulating me. You're making me question everything that I believe about myself.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the control factor is so significant to understanding why a perpetrator or abuser, particularly why they do what they do. Now, there's a caveat there because a lot of times these things happen because it's been imposed on them and there's been no intervention. There's been no type of healing. There's been no anything. A lot of times there's never been any recognition of it. How many times in your family unit have you heard them say, "Oh, that's just John. John acts like that.
Right.
John's personality is like that." You know, or I've heard people say like, "Go get your baby from John." Never explaining that John has these tendencies or different things of that nature. Or John will be calm when he walks in the door, and 10 minutes later, John is explosive all over the place, and everybody kind of just ignores it and goes about their way.
Mm-hmm. Or acts like as if it's not
Acts like they act like it is not only not evident, but that it's not a problem. Mm-hmm. I never understood, and I am the one that's so vocal, not to a negative degree, but I know my goal is to pull people aside and even ask them, are you recognizing what's going on here? And not only are you recognizing what's going on, but are you recognizing how you're impacting other people? You have children afraid, you have adults afraid, you have people not wanting to talk. In some instances, in social settings, I've seen people get up and leave because they didn't want to deal with a particular person.
Mm-hmm.
And what better way to control you is if I threaten you. If I make you feel the scare tactics, if you display a weapon to the average person and they know you have these tendencies and the ability to utilize it in a certain way and that you will do this, that causes fear, that causes intimidation. It plays with your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another way to gain control of a person.
Yeah.
And I can tell people, I say, never question the reality of a threat. Because a lot of people say, oh, they're not going to do that. They don't really mean that. No, you don't know what a person is capable of. All of these active shooters and in a lot of these different high profile cases where a lot of lives have been taken, people misjudge the situation and assume that this person would never carry out their threats. So I function under the premise that if you threaten me, if you say anything to me that's along the line of the threat, I believe it. And not only do I believe it, I have to figure out now, how am I going to function here? What boundaries, what barriers, what do I need to happen? Because I'm not going to give you a second and third time to threaten me. I don't know your true intentions.
Yeah. And that is so true for so many, not just like how you said, these active shooters and stuff, people of domestic violence. That is a key thing. You never know. Some people have been in marriages, and then one day you wake up and that person is that person takes your life or whatever the case may be is, and people have no idea, or they say, well, he did kind of have these little traits, or he did kind of have, but I read a specific meme that said, what you ignore today, you will pay for tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And I'm a strong believer that when you have red flags such as these, like I said, using intimidation, the putting him or her down, especially the emotional abuse, because we talked about that before even coming on the live. But things like this will really put a person, like, play mental games with them. I mean, it's absolutely horrible. And the gaslighting, I know from firsthand experience, because like you said, that was one of the things that affected me personally as a survivor. Is I've always been kind of strong-willed. I my family is from a whole line of independent women. We have rare men in our family unless you are married into the family. Other than that, it's a lot of females. So of course that independence was always there, and it wasn't until my domestic violence relationship and after that where it really, he got into my head, and from there it was always second guessing. So these are for sure signs, that if you see in any type of relationship, definitely they're red flags for sure. Let's go on to the using isolation, and minimizing and denying and blaming. So it says use in isolation, controlling what he or she does, who he or she sees or talks to, what he or she reads, and also limiting her or him to outside involvement, using jealousy to justify actions. That's isolation. And then you have minimizing, denying, and blaming, which is making light of abuse and not taking his or her actions seriously, saying that the abuse didn't happen, shifting the responsibility from the abuser, and also saying that he or she caused it. So also like pushing the blame off of the abuser and onto that person. Um, so these are another key things that are crucial, especially that isolation. I want you to talk to about that part specifically for sure, because I know, for instance, a lot of abusers tend to, like COVID-19, isolate you from your family, from your friends, so that way you really they don't know what's going on in your immediate life, or they try to isolate you so that way you're their person to go to, so you don't get easily influenced. Like if a person knows how bad Jimmy is treating you, you get what I'm saying? Of course, your mom is not going to sit there and allow it. But of course, if you're not close like that, or they keep you hidden, your mom also doesn't know either. So talk a little bit about that.
It's really a very serious mind game. And I said it lends itself again back to the need or desire to control. But I know most families, most circles, most friendships, if you begin to exhibit symptoms, if you begin to talk even a little bit about abuse, which typically most or many outsiders have already picked up on it to some degree,
Mm-hmm.
there comes wisdom, there comes guidance. Because if you speak to me, you're going to get a myriad of resources, referrals, and different things of that nature. A perpetrator or abuser understands I need to close the gateway. I need to limit this person to access to any side that is going to help them establish a plan, figure out an escape, be able to contact somebody. But more importantly, I want to prevent you from being able to leave me. Control means I have you at will. I can do whatever I desire to do to you. And behind closed doors, that is very feasible. But when you go out in the community, now you have freedom. You can make telephone calls. You can do different things of that nature. But unfortunately, many people, because of the intimidation and the emotional abuse, they feel that they have no recourse. They feel like this person is their everything. I have nobody else to go to. And a lot of times, being cut off from family and friends, you really buy into that understanding, although it is an illusion.
Yep.
It works very effectively because we must remember that abusers are very manipulative. A lot of times they watch the environment, they watch people who are in the environment. How many times in my abusive situation I had to go back and change clothes? I've had telephone calls interrupted, certain things I couldn't do. Didn't, and to me, in my flight of fantasy, I was like, oh my God, he loves me so much. He doesn't want me to go here. And he doesn't want me to present myself in it, not realizing that was all of the part of the dysfunctional grooming that drew me in more and more. Because now I'm not seeing him as an abuser. I'm seeing him or viewing him erroneously as a person who really loves and cares about me. And what I
Mm-hmm.
also want to tuck into this particular area, especially it lends itself on what we discussed earlier, we have to factor in, because it was definitely that in my case, is that there's substance abuse, there are mental illness disorders. There's a lot of different things that play into these type of situations. So many times it's not straightforward like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people assume. That's why I caution people, please be very careful from the outside. The information and the guidance and the hard and fast, do this, do that, when you really don't know what's going on. You don't really know what this person is dealing with.
Yep.
My thing is, just talk to me, tell me what you know, tell me your reality, and let's see what we can do. But ultimately, it's your move, it's your call, because it's your life, it's your safety. I cannot dictate that wisely from the outside.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I strongly feel that domestic violence is also, when I typically approach it, I never talk about it from a professional's point of view, because I'm no professional, and I'll tell someone in a heartbeat. All I can do is talk from experiences and things that I've seen from over and over and again, that are common traits, that are red flags, something to just keep an eye on. But also, like you said, everybody's situation is different. Everybody, there's no blueprint to domestic violence, and sometimes when people throw out, oh, you can just leave, it's not always that easy. It's not always that easy, especially for the next tab that we're about to go into, when it comes down to using children.
Yes,
That right there is one of the main factors that women who have children with their abusers stay in that relationship. So as you can see on the power wheel, and this doesn't have to be someone who you have a relationship or have children with. This could also be someone you've dated, because I've had that issue, where I've dated someone who had children and I don't have children, and they use their children against me. So it says, using children, making him or her feel guilty about the children, using the children to relay messages, using visitation to harass him or her, and threatening to take the children away. Also, using male privilege, which is threatening or treating him or her like a servant, making all the big decisions, acting like the master of the castle, and being the one to define women's and men's roles. So, what do you feel about that part of this power and control wheel?
all of it is very true. And I'll give you an example from a personal perspective. We go
Mm-hmm.
back to me being adopted. So no real sense of family. The adopted family has become everything to me, because this is all that I know. So I began
Mm-hmm.
to birth children very young. I had my children at a young age, all three of them. And
Mm-hmm.
inside of this relationship, two were to the abuser, one was before that relationship materialized. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize the cycle of me excusing, minimizing, explaining away was a part of trying to keep my family together. I went above and beyond. I'm talking about writing letters and, getting jobs back and putting pieces together, because I never had the biological connection. I never had any of that in play in my life. And I wanted it so desperately that I was willing to deal with the dysfunction, which literally, I have an indefinite restraining order right now, but I was willing to deal with all of this for the sake of keeping my family together, not realizing that I could not control this individual. I could not change this individual. I really had no dog in the fight. His physical strength was absolutely mind blowing. So there was
Mm-hmm.
no way I was going to ever accomplish anything good. But you know what? I never realized until far later on inside of my psychoeducational curve that my children were being traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
They would come to tell me later on during discussions things that they remembered, that I would just sit there and cry. When I packed up to leave that residence, there was glass broken all over the floor. There were holes in the wall. There was blood, because the last incident was particularly volatile.
Mm-hmm.
I could have
Wow.
even, and I caution women now, I said, even inside of you wanting to stay and you wanting to protect, I say you can now run the risk of you losing your children, having them removed and sheltered because your protective caregiver capacities are diminished. You're
Yeah,
not protecting your children, even though in your mind, and catch this, in my mind, I was doing the right thing by trying to hold my family together.
families together and keep them together, and by protecting them, especially coming from minority families, where seeing a whole household or a two-family household is not as common. That is definitely something that would encourage someone to fight for a relationship, especially a one that they feel is a healthy relationship when it's not more than they should have, for sure.
Absolutely. And the male privilege, I can certainly say, because a lot of men are groomed head of the household. You're the breadwinner, you command the most. And then by chance, if you have a woman who comes along who's a mover and a shaker, not
Mhm.
only does she command a good career, she's educated, hit the glass ceiling, she's making good money, she's commanding things. If a man is not centered and sure of himself, and seeing what an asset he has over here, he could see her as a liability.
Right. Yeah.
He saw her son, oh no, I gotta cut this down, I gotta cut this off. No, you can't be working that much. You're working too much. Some way to now make her like a servant, subservient to him. You cannot achieve even equal status, but you certainly can't be beyond me. Is a mindset that many men have, unfortunately.
It does. And I think that nowadays in 2020, because my family is from the South, you feel me? And I've kind of always had that submissive mentality, more or less, like, you know, wanting to, I could never be a housewife. That just out the question. But I definitely want to be the one to, you know, do the feminine side of cooking your meals and all that stuff. Like, that's just my personality. However, um, a lot of people, like you said, when you are an independent woman or you're independent statue and you have a voice, and men, for whatever reason, that is a perfect asset, especially when you have a because now that allows you to propel. You don't have to, I feel like you don't have to do as much work, and you have a teammate now. And I think that in this day and age, we're grasping that mentality more of not necessarily equalism, but like, you know, we're balanced. You get what I'm saying? Like, if you're up here, then, you know, I like, if I'm down here, then I'm gonna be up here today, and vice versa. Like, you fit for each other versus just that cookie cutter. This is how our relationship is. You only do this, I only do that, and that's that. Like, we've
But
passed.
if you really look at it this way, I think it will serve you well. I'm not trying to script you to any degree when we're coming inside of a relationship. I'm just looking inside and seeing who you are, accepting who you are, and I'm ready to embrace whatever comes along with that. Because the mindset that your success is my success, that's how I look at it. Whatever my husband does, whatever he achieves in this life, I'm Mrs. Harris. So it benefits me. That's
Mm-hmm.
the mindset and that's the mentality he has. So he does not restrict me in any way in that fashion. But I want to give you this caveat because I want young people to really take this in anybody who's dating, but particularly young people. The first date, and I want you to think back. Typically, it's more about relatability, who you are, where you like to go, what do you do, what you like to travel, what our next date is going to be like. I believe the first date, it should be a difficult conversation to a certain degree. Why waste each other's time rather if we're not a match for each other, or if our thought process is not in a line? So, what about? Is there any mental health in your family? Mental illness going on in your family? Is there a background of it? What do
Mm-hmm.
you think about dating? What do you think about children? Where are you in life? Are you looking like immediately just to hang out and have a good time? We don't ask those questions, and then we're offended when we figure out later that this individual's mindset about this whole situation does not mirror ours at all. But I
At
tell
all.
you all the time, you never ask the questions.
But see, and from my perspective, being a millennial, right, and dating in this day and age, that I'm that girl. I'm the one that asks the difficult questions. Like I don't like small talk like that. Like, you feel me? Like, yeah, it's cool, but I don't want to, especially after domestic violence. I don't want to wait 5 months or 10 to find out that you psychopath. Like, I need to know like right now. So, but I've realized that men typically feel as if that, like, it's almost like they like whoa, wait a minute, you get what I'm saying, like, you moving too fast. But however, I feel like if you're building, those are key questions that you should be asking. I don't care about your favorite color, you feel me? That is something that I can learn 10 years from now, you feel me? But what I do want to know is, if we ever get into a bind financially, are you does it stress you out to the point where, as if, you know what I'm saying, like, you get control, and like, those are certain things that you need to have a conversation. Do you want to get married? You know what I'm saying? I don't want to wait a year from dating you to find out that you don't even like kids. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, like you said, it's very important to have those conversations. It's just figuring out how to have those conversations in this day and age. And I feel like, if talking to the right person, like, if you ask those questions and they're afraid automatically, like, that is your cue to get up and walk away. You feel me? Because obviously you're not sitting at the right table regardless. But just know that if you're ready to have those conversations, you're gonna have to go through a lot of a lot of weeds to get there. Because,
And
baby,
I'm not saying be overly aggressive. I'm saying being confident. I am
mhm,
remarried. God bless me with an amazing man in my life now. But we had that difficult conversation up front. You know why? Because I'm in my mid 40s at this point. So a lot of the do's and the don'ts are very hard and fast. And one of
mhm,
it was my career, where things were going, what I desired inside of it. I knew that I had a calling, a mantle from God on my life. If you don't want to be with a woman who's faith-based and centered in this way, and you kind of want to hang out and do whatever you want to do, I'm not the woman for you. But why would I go through the dating him for months and have all of this going on and then put all of this on his plate? I told him up front so he could make a conscientious decision. And the same for me. You
mhm.
are a woman of substance, queen. We come packaged. We are running businesses. We're doing things. We're handling stuff. We're in leadership roles. So no, I'm just not going to take anything on this side of this spectrum as well, because I know what I want. So my
Mm-hmm.
message is to women and men, but start figuring out what it is that you want, so you're not left for somebody else to dictate it for you and dictate it incorrectly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, one of the pearls of wisdom that Sabrina Harris is dropping today is, make sure you guys know what you want. Because, like you said, if you are firm, and as someone who is a trauma survivor, and who has gone through gaslighting, who has gone through the whole you crazy phase and your thoughts, if you are for sure in yourself, and not saying that you're not going to be tested. However, it is essential and almost detrimental for you to have some type of sense of self. That way, nobody can't just come along and just sweep you off of who you know that you are. Your feet are planted, and that is strongly important. So, um, I'm going to we're going to talk about the last two, and then I really want to talk really quickly into safety plans. I want to talk about that because I know that typically, if you guys are tuned in, y'all know that this is not the first time that I've had this domestic violence relationship. However, I still want to I always try to leave you guys with some tips on what to do if this is your situation. So, really quickly, the last two on this wheel is using economic abuse, preventing him or her from getting a job or keeping a job. Like Sabrina said, dealing with the whole job situation, having to try to restore and keep your job, asking him for money, giving him or her an allowance, taking his or her money, not letting him or her know about or have access to the family income, and also using threats, such as making him or her carry out threats, do something to hurt him, threatening him or her to commit suicide or to report him or her to welfare, making him or her drop charges, and making him or her do illegal things. So these are also key things that are also on the power wheel of control and power. And again, we are not saying that I'm not an expert. However, these are significant red flags that have come up in most trauma relationships, not just domestic violence. We're talking about sexual violence, emotional abuse, the whole 9 yards. So I want to really quickly, now this is super important to me because how did you have, when you went through your trauma, what was did you know about a safety plan first off? Because I didn't.
Actually, yes, I did. I was blessed to be connected with Palm Beach County Victim Services, and it was a part of their service offering. And actually, it was essential for me because I was under a time window, meaning he was incarcerated at the time for the last event that I explained to you, where the home was all in disarray and all of that had gone on. So he was arrested. And it was my decision at that point. Okay, this is enough. And it was a whole thing that came into it with the sergeant that I'll never forget in a conversation that he had with me. But I realized with children and relocation, there were certain parameters that need to be in place. I knew that when he was released from jail, he was going to come looking for me. So I tell people, I said, safety planning is certainly not something that you want to do on your own, but the concept of it is, how do I relocate, or how do I establish myself and my children, if you have children, independently of my abuser in a safe and whole manner? For some people, to be honest with you, it means relocating. They have to get them out of the area. It's just no trying to reposition them here, because even inside of shelters, I've done shelters, even a community home. I still have an amazing relationship with this woman, but I was still going to work, and I was still doing a lot of things that put me at risk for this individual to be able to have access with me. So safety planning with an entity that deals with victimization and abuse is essential. I know for Palm Beach County, it's Palm Beach County Victim Services is one of the lead agencies. You have ABDA, our organization, House of Love Billionaires. We can assist with safety planning. But the ultimate goal is to figure out what is best for you inside of relocation and how to keep yourself safe. And most often it comes with an advocate. So if you have legal issues or different things that you need to navigate through, for me, it was a divorce and a lot of different things. I had a well-rounded continuum of care. So I don't even encourage people to try to do it of your own accord, because there's information out on the highway, but connect with the service that can walk you all the way through this and connect you with counseling as well.
Absolutely. And I can definitely second that, just due to the fact that I too, I was actually one of the people that you were speaking about. I was the one that had to relocate, and that's how I ended up in Orlando, Central Florida, because I could not stay here due to my circumstance and it being a high risk case, and them actually let him out. So I definitely understand that. And yes, it does come with a victim advocate when you do reach out to these organizations. Like Sabrina said, she has House of Billionaires that offers these services. So if you guys, I will post her information at the end of this session as well. But I also want to make sure that I leave you guys with the National Domestic Violence Hotline information, because they are always open 24/7. And that number is all found at the bottom of our screen. It's something that you can always call when you're in crisis. I know for a fact that there's an organization called Lovers Respect that provides the same information and resources to teens and young adults, but also for local assistance. If you are in South Florida, specifically on South Florida, Broward and Miami, we have Women in Distress, which is a local domestic violence center. They also have a crisis line. They are my organization that I am partnered up with, that I assist out throughout the year to help with anything I can. And Harbor House, which is the crisis line or the domestic violence center up in Central Florida. And I'll definitely get those information from you, Sabrina, in regards to West Palm Beach. And I will drop those in our comments so that way all of you have that information, because I want to make sure that you guys know that there are resources. And one of the most important ones here is financial assistance. I was one of the people that when I was going through a domestic violence relationship, I had to move out of my apartment within 72 hours. Within 2 weeks, I was up. About after my court case, I was relocated to a whole nother county. And one of the questions I was trying to figure out is how the hell am I going to get this done? Because at that point in time, I didn't have a job due to the fact of this whole situation. I mean, the whole 9 yards. So, just so you guys are aware, your local attorney general's office does have victim information, such as your local domestic violence or trauma abuse centers. And also, Melanin Marketing Communication will always provide this information literally, you just send us a message, and we will make sure that we provide this information to you guys almost immediately. But I do want to make sure that although, like Sabrina said, like you said, Sabrina, talking about a safety plan is definitely something that everyone should have with an advocate. I do want to make sure that you guys have if you're in a domestic violence relationship, or know someone in a domestic violence relationship, certain things are super important just to have on hand, just in case. And this does not have to be towards any domestic violence. This can just be, you need to have this just hanging around your house to be able to be quickly accessed just in case anything happens. And that would be such as your social security card, your telephone, any emergency telephone numbers that you might need. For example, whether that be a crisis line or someone you can call if we're in an event of an emergency. And then if you have any order of protections or stuff like that, your passports and your birth certificates. I always say to keep those information as close as possible and always in reach where you can find them in the case of anything, any type of emergency. Doesn't have to be any type of abuse, because those are things that you never know you might need, and they are very important documents to have. So, Sabrina, I want to thank you again for coming on. We are, like I told y'all, this was going to be a very special, a very, very special live this day. We actually went over, which I know is rare, but I told y'all we was going to give y'all some gems, and we was going to get y'all this information. But again, I want to thank y'all for tuning in, and Sabrina, I want to thank you again for coming on our show. Do you have, I know that you have a lot of things going on, but is there anything that we should know about?
I would like to encourage you to tune into the Culture Pearls of Wisdom show. It's on Facebook as well. It's a social media based talk show. And we emphasize a lot of things inside of victimization, mental health, positive psychology, and things of that nature. But I wanted to go back real quick and say I tested the theory because a lot of people have assumed in error that like the hotlines and different things are not up and running. So I tested the theory with the National Domestic Violence Hotline. It worked famously and got me right back here to Palm Beach County Victim Services and some other things that should have happened. So test the theory and make sure. But I want to leave the message that it's not okay. No matter what excuse you come up with, no matter what comes in your mind, there's no rhyme or reason, whether it's verbal, emotional, physical, social, financial, there is no acceptable reason for an abuse. And once you realize and you accept the fact that you're being abused, it becomes your journey. And other people are here to help you navigate it. But the goal is for you to get out, your children as well, if you have them, in a safe and whole manner. And ultimately, that is definitely going to mean you self-attending, which means some type of counseling and intervention to whatever degree suits your situation so that you can be whole and move forward in a positive way. So thank you for the invitation. I think you're amazing. You would definitely be invited to our platform, so get ready for it. And I just want to say God bless you all, and thank you for listening and joining in.
Yes, and thank you guys again. Thank you so much, Sabrina. If you guys want to learn more about Sabrina, the House of Love and Airs, and also her incredible show, Cultural Pearls of Wisdom, y'all. She is so island. It just don't make no sense. Um, but that accent be wanting to come out so bad. But yes, you guys, please follow her on Facebook and Instagram at House of Love and Airs. I will make sure that I drop this information down in the comments, in the description as well. But again, thank y'all so much for tuning in to the Melanin Alert. We always try to provide you with the most best information, the most incredible experiences, wisdom, and knowledge. And make sure that y'all tune in every Thursday, 6 p.m. Next Thursday, we'll have another special guest. But in the meantime and in between time, y'all stay melanin, y'all stay amazing, stay safe, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.